Today marks a solemn day in American history. 20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina slammed into New Orleans. Who could forget these images from the lower Ninth Ward, one of the hardest hit communities after the levees failed. Now, entire neighborhoods submerged, people trapped on rooftops, and homes wiped out, destroyed.
Just incredible all these years later to even see that video. In the weeks that followed, the New Orleans Superdome served as a refuge for over 30,000 people, but conditions inside quickly deteriorated due to a lack of power and supplies. In all, about 1,400 deaths in New Orleans were blamed on Katrina. 20 years later, many are still working to breathe life back into the Crescent City.
Rebuilding my city is more than just rebuilding houses and getting on the roof. It's doing the work to keep our music and our culture going. And so that's a part of the rebuilding process, and that's why I came back to New Orleans.
Such a big part of New Orleans, right? The music, the culture.
Right.
And you can hear more about that musician Troy Sawyer's work to rebuild New Orleans music and cultural scene coming up on CBS Mornings. Wisdom, you were actually on the ground in New Orleans reporting on the aftermath.
Right. I was working here in Washington, D.C. I'd been here for a couple of years. And the next day after we arrived there, because we had to fly from this area into Shreveport and then rent a car and then drive over because everything, it was total shutdown and chaos in New Orleans at the time. You tossed to me during some of these live shots.
We were working together, right?
We were working together in Washington, D.C. So this is right in downtown. Water, you see that water behind me because there were certain areas that were flooded. In some areas, there was a bar down there that stayed open the entire time. But once you got outside of the city, that's when you started seeing some of the devastation. Complete apartments and buildings that were underwater. People were trapped. At one point, we were on a boat. That first shot you saw was me on a boat with a rescue team going around trying to rescue people. There were bodies floating in the water. They were bloated. I'm sorry to be so graphic, but that's what it was at the time because they had been in there so long. Animals had been trapped on rooftops and on balconies because they could not get away. We were going around. One lady had been trapped inside of her house for several days with no power. It was running out of food. They got to her in time, but there were so many stories like that. And you know, I grew up about 3 hours away from New Orleans. I used to go down there all the time. And it was a vibrant city, you know, vibrant city, parties, and then to see an American city devastated like this was incredible because the images were one thing when you saw it on TV, but when you go down there and see it, and I have family down there as well, my wife has family down there as well, when you saw it in person, it took it to another level. And it let you know just how serious it was, that devastation and that disaster.
And what happened afterwards? You saw the military there as well.
The military. Interstate shut down
right.
because of the water. Military was everywhere trying to assist. It was awful. We were sleeping in cars and RVs. But one of the things that struck me is what you said. We were there to tell the story of just how bad it was. And that's our responsibility, as you mentioned earlier, as journalists, telling the story of just how bad this situation was.
And the aftermath.
And the aftermath.
Yes.
So
for me, that's the aftermath. And we'll talk later. But Mary, let's bring you into this conversation. First of all, here's Mary.
Hey,
I'm sorry. I was waiting for the sound to play there, but here we go.
WUSA 9 Weather Impact is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
Wisdom was saying that, you know, Wisdom was there. I was reporting on it from here, but, you know, this affected you and your family as well.
It did. You know, it's like, you know, waking up one day and everybody you know and love is essentially homeless and you can't talk to half of them because the communication is gone and their homes have been flooded and they don't even have anywhere to go. One of the things that really struck me during that time was a message from a meteorologist at the National Weather Service. Highly unusual to use language like this when discussing upcoming storms, but he said he felt compelled because there was literally no other way to put it. You don't normally hear this. You normally hear, hey, we've got a dangerous storm coming. Storm surge is going to be this. These are going to be the winds. But he said, devastating damage expected. Hurricane Katrina, a most powerful hurricane with unprecedented strength. Persons, pets, livestock exposed to winds will face certain death if struck with, debris flying around. High-rise buildings will sway dangerously to the point of total collapse. All windows will blow out. This was just a chilling message, and unfortunately, we did see that came to fruition.